Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Caitlin, and for today's video we are going to be doing a reading wrap up for the month of January. So I'll be going over all the books that I read this month, or this previous month in January, and kind of giving you my thoughts, share my opinions, and obviously give my star ratings. But before we jump into that, if you haven't already, please make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and to subscribe to my YouTube channel down below. And please comment what your favorite book of the month was for the month of January, because I'm curious. So yeah, let's get started. I read a total of 8 books this month. Can I just pat myself on the back? Because I don't think I've read that many books in 1 month since like high school. So I'm very, very proud of myself. Also, I'm in post-grad. I'm not working as much. I'm kind of taking it easy. Now, post-January, I don't know if I'm going to be able to read 8 books a month ever again, but you never know. So yeah, I read a total of 8 books. Some were Kindle books, some were physical books, some were library books. So I don't own or have all of the books with me physically to show you, but we're still going to talk about it. And I'm going to do this in order of like when I read the book. So like the first book I read, last book I read, you know the drill. So let's start off with the first book I read this month, which was Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. And I solely read this book because my older sister was like raving about, like, this is her favorite book I think of all time. Well, I wouldn't say of all time, but it's like one of her favorite books, and she has been like pushing me to read this book for so long. And I was like, I don't really know, historical fiction is not really my thing. I don't know if I'll like it. And I read it and I was right. I didn't like this. I gave this book 2 stars, and I think 2 stars was being generous. I mean, it's not the worst book I've ever read in my entire life, but it definitely wasn't the best book. So Where the Crawdads Sings, to put it kind of simply, it is a genre mixture of a lot of different things. So there's like a murder mystery, there's like a coming of age story, there's hints of romance. It's just a lot of different things. It's like general fiction, historical fiction, is a lot of different things. Where the Crawdad Sings follows our main character, Kaya. She gets abandoned by her mom at a very young age, I think like 6 years old, and then all of her siblings abandon her, and then she's left with her dad, who then later eventually abandons her, and she lives in the marsh. People call her the Marsh Girl, and it's kind of her story, literally like her coming of age story from like when she was 6 years old to when she's 19 years old. And there's also a murder mystery investigation going on at the same time, so you kind of get chapters bouncing between what's going on in Kaya's life, the murder mystery, and kind of how those two intersect. Now, with all that being said, I had a hard time reading this book because I was just, I don't want to say I was bored, but there's just so much descriptions and so much illustrations of nature and trees and the marsh. If you are into descriptions of nature, I know the woman who wrote this, I think she has a degree in ecology, so I guess that makes sense. But if you're into that, then I think you would love this book. I was not into it. I could not care less. It was just too much. It was very verbose and very complex and extreme with the descriptions, but at times it was beautiful, but at times it was just not working for me. I also feel like one of the big things I took away from this book is that some people are really good at hiding things. I didn't really care too much about the romance. I felt like the romance in this story was just, one made sense in a way, the other one was very confusing. It just didn't make sense. So there were a lot of things that I just were a bit confused about. It is slow in the beginning. I think it's split up into 2 parts. Once you hit part 2, I think the story takes off, but in the beginning, you really have to push through. I think for me, what it would have made this book a better experience were if you would have like cut off the murder mystery. I think the murder mystery should have been scrapped completely. I think that the romance should have just had one romance interest and it should have just been sprinkled throughout the story. But I think this would have been a great book if it just explored Kaya's journey through abandonment and loneliness, and that kind of, we went on that specific journey and followed that theme rather than having so many different things included. But that's just my personal opinion. I just think it's just a preference for this book. Wasn't for me. Okay, the next book I read, it is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I'm sure everyone, you know what this book is about. If you're watching this, you probably know what this book is about. This book is all over TikTok, all over BookTube, all over Bookstagram, like it's everywhere. And for good reasons. Now, the book talk girlies, I don't trust them that much. But with this book right here, they were absolutely right. This book is fantastic. I give it 5 out of 5 stars. It was an easy 5 out of 5 stars for me. It reads so well, and it reads just so fluently. Like, it's just, once you start reading it, you can't stop. You cannot put it down. So The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, if you don't know, it follows the magnificent story of our main character, Evelyn Hugo. She wants to write a book about her life, so she contacts a journalist, Monique, and Monique sits down with her and she kind of recounts all of the important, I guess, like the big moments in her life obviously why she married the 7 husbands. You kind of go through each of the husbands and why she married them and things like that. And it's just a beautiful story. It is so like glamorous, the glitz and the glams. Evelyn Hugo is hands down one of the most incredible characters I have ever read. Like, she's so honest and she's so real and she's so herself, you know what I mean? And she's not trying to convince you to think she's an amazing, incredible person. I personally, like, I don't like her, like, I wouldn't be friends with her, but I respect her in the sense of, like, she's just very honest in who she is. And this book definitely made me cry. I teared up a few times, but it definitely made me cry. Stay true, Blue. Me and this book, we're like best friends. Like, we are literally best friends. This might be a contender for favorite book of the year. I don't know. But yeah, I loved 7 Husbands, Evelyn Hugo. 5 stars. So the next book I read is Equivalent Exchange by Christina C. Jones. I read it on my Kindle. I have a Kindle Unlimited, which is hands down the best thing ever. If you are into romance specifically, you need a Kindle. You need a Kindle and you need Kindle Unlimited. It's just amazing. But this book, I literally bought it, or I didn't buy it. I read it on a whim. I had no idea what it was really about. I just knew that it was Black love and I was like, I'm just gonna read it because of that reason. And it seemed interesting, I guess, from like what someone said about it that I followed on Bookstagram. I'm not entirely sure who specifically mentioned it, but someone mentioned it on Bookstagram and I was like, I'll read it. Essentially, Equivalent Exchange is a very quick romance story. Soulmate, you were destined for me, you were put on this earth for me, something along those lines. That's what it is. So if you're into that, I think you would love this book. One thing that stood out for me with this book is the fact that our characters know how to communicate. There is no miscommunication trope. They're mature adults and they know how to speak to each other. They know how to open their mouths and talk to each other. That when there's a conflict that arises, when one person's feelings are kind of, you know, maybe their feelings are not on the same page, they talk about it. They communicate. And I realized how much I needed that and craved that in these romance stories because I'm tired of the miscommunication. There's so many good, memorable scenes. There's so many cute scenes. This book is definitely steamy. Lakin, who's like the main character, the main male love interest, he was putting it down. Okay? He was putting it down. I love Lakin. I love it all. But the story is also very emotional. It's very impactful. There's a lot of really cool storylines going on and plot devices that are placed in the story that I think is really unique. There is, trigger warning, there is some domestic violence that is talked about in the story, but I think, again, the author uses, she talks about it with grace, and it's not done poorly. So it's a very cute romance with enough character depth and story depth to kind of keep you engaged, and again, it's super steamy, so if you're into that, Equivalent Exchange is for you. So I rated Equivalent Exchange 4 out of 5 stars. So the next book I read was Raybearer by Jordan Ifueko. I don't have a physical copy of it, but I will put a picture up on the screen so you guys know what I'm talking about. This book right here was everything for me. I was back in my fantasy bag. I haven't read a fantasy in a hot minute, and I was like, I just need something amazing. And I was like, a YA fantasy seems good. It's not super long. I think it was only like a little bit over 300 pages. So I was like, I'm gonna read Raybearer. Someone had recommended it to me in like my DMs on Instagram, and I never really paid attention to it, but I was like, I'm going to read it just because, you know, you never know if you're gonna like it. This book changed my life. This is why I love fantasy so much. So Raybearer is a African inspired fantasy, YA fantasy, and it is just so rich in culture. When I read this story, I was just like, wow, like to see parts of my culture in a book, I've never had that type of experience before. So it was an amazing reading experience. It is so rich. It is so immersive. It is so genuine and authentic and just lovable. Like, all the characters, you will just obsess over them, okay? Tar, my bestie, the main character, she is the funniest person I've ever met in my entire life. Literally amazing. Deo, I think that's how you say his name. He is the most precious human being in the entire world. I want to protect him with my soul. You just meet this amazing group of kids and so many different relationships are being built, and it's just a beautiful story about family and relationships and friendships and destiny and just purpose and just everything, okay? If you are interested in it, I guarantee you, if you pick it up, you will love it. Like, out of all the books that I'm going to be talking about today, please pick up Raybearer. I'm currently reading the sequel and finale to the story. It's Redemptor, and I'm only like 2 chapters in and I've already cried. So that goes to show how impactful this book is to me. And another thing I really love about this book, I also think it's a good book if you're like new to fantasy, because it's very fast paced. Like, yes, there's amazing world building, but even the way Ifueko writes the world, it's not just like, here's, you know, an entire chapter just explaining something. She puts it in the story in very unique ways and tries different different ways to tell the story and to build the world. I gave Raybearer 4 out of 5 stars. The only reason I gave Raybearer 4 out of 5 stars and didn't give it 5 out of 5 stars is because while I love the book so much, I also felt like there was just not enough time with the relationships that the main character was having, because that's something that she's been craving for so long, and it's obviously very important to her and very important to the story, and we were told how close she was with all these people, but we didn't really get to see those relationships being built and getting to be developed. I wish we just had a few more chapters of just her connecting with people and just her having fun with them, so we can really get a better grasp and understanding of how close these relationships are to her. That's one reason why I didn't give it 5 stars. And then another reason why I didn't give it 5 stars, the ending, I don't know how I feel about the ending. The next book I picked up is Secrets We Hunt by Dana Isolé. She is also the author of Dipped in Holly and Games We Play. Read those two last year. So good. They're straight up smutty novellas, so if that's your type of thing, maybe you can check it out. But I read it on my Kindle. It's on Kindle Unlimited. One of the characters from Games We Play, he has his own book, and that's Secrets We Hunt, which is what I read this month, or in January. I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. And the only reason this book had 3 stars from me is literally because the smut was top notch. It had like my favorite things to read about and stuff, but it was so good that I was like, I have to give you something. But everything else outside of that was garbage. Like, the character was garbage. The plot, which isn't really a plot, but whatever it is, was garbage. Things did not make sense. Things did not add up. Just garbage, 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 garbage. But the smut, which is like 80% of the book, was fantastic. So that's where the 3-star rating came from. I just had a really hard time believing a lot of the situations. Some of the things that the characters would do, I had a hard time believing that, which I guess I understand you have to suspend your belief when you read some of these stories, but still, it was just like, really, girl? Like, for real? And then, trigger warning, there is sexual assault in the story, and I felt like the author was so inconsiderate. The way it was handled was so poor. I felt like the sexual assault was a tool in the story to fuel the main character's possessiveness over the female character. That was it. It served no other purpose but that. And I'm like, if you want to show how possessive he is, you did not have to include this sexual assault, storyline at all, because that is something that is very hard, and that is something that should be handled with a lot of grace and compassion. And I just felt like it was just thrown in here, and then the way it was used, especially at the end of it, the story, just very distasteful. Just not a fan. So that's how I felt about that one. Wait, the next book I have a copy of. I actually have a copy of this one. It is How to Fail at Flirting by Denise Williams. If you are new to romance, please read this. If you are not new to romance, please read this. If you don't read romance, please read this. Everybody, please read this. When I tell you, I knew within 50 pages, this book was a 5 out of 5. 50 pages, I was like, this book is a 5 out of 5 stars. This is literally the cutest thing I've ever read in my entire life. Wow. Denise Williams is, and this is a debut novel, I'm pretty sure. She is coming for all the romance girlies next. She is coming for them. She is like not leaving room for anybody. This book is fantastic. This book is amazing. This book made me cry. This book made me blush. It is a good blend of steaminess, but cuteness and romance. Like, when I say romance, this is what I mean. Like, this is true romance. This is a true love story. This is a true connection, emotional connection that two characters are having with each other that is able to build. They're able to communicate. Again, there's no awkward miscommunication trope. These characters are very mature. They're very honest with each other. Jake, the main love interest, he is hands down like the most incredible human being I've ever met in my entire life. All book boyfriends can take something from Jake. Just how straightforward he is, just how honest and open he is. He's not trying to push her in one way. He's not trying to change her in another way. He accepts her and loves her and embraces her for who she is as a person. Naya, that's the main character girl's name. She just got out of a pretty abusive relationship. She's not had the best luck with flirting and kind of having a life outside of it. If you've read Get a Life by Chloe Brown, there's some similarities to that in this story, and I think that was pretty cool. So she's trying to get a life, and one of those things is to go out, be free, have fun, flirt, essentially. I don't really think the title matches too much with the story, but I'll accept it. She meets Jake at a bar. They literally hit it off, and it's just a beautiful journey just following their love story and following how they get close to each other, and also following the story of Naya. She is such a strong woman in this story, and she has such an impactful journey to self-love and self-acceptance, coming on the other side of the abusive relationship that she endured. And it was just such a great reading experience. I loved it so much. 5 out of 5 stars. Amazing. We only have 2 more books left. So the next book I read was Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas. I also read it on my Kindle. Let me tell you something. Me and Penelope, we're like besties. Like, I have read Credence, I've read Punk 57, and I've read Birthday Girl. I think those are her 3 popular standalones. And I gave Credence 4 stars. I gave Punk 57 5 stars. The book is amazing. And I read Birthday Girl in January, and I gave it 3 stars. It's not my favorite standalone, but it's not terrible. It's not the worst thing I've ever read in my entire life. I think for me, my issue with Birthday Girl was the ridiculous age gap. It just, the girl's 19. Pike, the main guy, is 38. So he's nearing 40. I can do age gap, but it was just too much for me. And also, it's a boyfriend's dad trope, and I don't like that. I don't like anything dealing with family. When you're mixing family like that, it's just not for me. Credence had that too, but they were other love interests, and I don't know, Credence, my mind when I was reading Credence was somewhere else. But apart from that, the story in itself, Kenna, our main character, she is dating this guy. I think his name is Noah. He's absolutely trash. He is awful. On her birthday, she meets Noah's dad without knowing it was Noah's dad. His name's Pike, and come to find out, they end up living together, Pike, Noah, and Kenna, due to some financial situations. And it's kind of just a story of Pike and Kenna growing closer as the time, you know, moves along. It is a mess. The story is a mess. First of all, Pike got very possessive very quickly, and I'm like, that is your, because they didn't break up, Kenna and Noah, they didn't break up until a while later in the story, but Pike was already talking about, oh my god, she's mine. And I'm like, that's your son's girlfriend who's literally 19. And she just turned 19, so she was 18. You can't even buy her drink. Relax, bro. I think that this story, I think specifically with Pike, he was just wanting to live out his teenage years because he had a child when he was 19 years old. And I felt like he saw Kenna as like an opportunity to live out his teenage years, because he kept saying how if I was 19 years old, you would be the type of girl I would go for. And I'm like, that's weird. And all of Pike's friends, like, they would make jokes. It was just very uncomfortable to read a lot of times, because I was like, this man is creepy. I was committed to the story. I was going to see it to the end. The ending was just weird. This whole story was just weird. I felt like I was on a trip reading this. It's not my favorite, okay? I will say something I did enjoy about this book. I did love the incorporation of the candles and birthday wishes that Penelope kind of puts into the story. I felt like that was really unique and very beautiful. So that's how I felt about Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Oh my god. The girl's name in Birthday Girl is not Kenna. The girl's name in Reminders of Him is Kenna. I don't know what the girl's name in Birthday Girl is. It's not important, but this Reminders of Him follows our main character Kenna and kind of her journey after prison, after 5 years being in prison, and her returning back to the town where kind of everything went wrong and why the reason she went to prison. And she's trying to reconnect with her daughter, and nobody wants to let her back into her daughter's life due to the nature of the incident that led her to prison. But she meets a guy, Ledger. He is a connection to her and her daughter, and they kind of form a romantic love interest and love story. And that is just, this book is just their journey through it all. It is told in dual POV, Kenna and Ledger. And yeah, that's all I'm going to tell you about this, because you shouldn't go into any of Colleen Hoover's books knowing too much. I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. I explained all of it in my reading vlog, so please check that out. Yeah, for me, my biggest thing was that I was just rooting for the downfall of the romance the entire book. I did not like the romance. I don't think the romance should have existed, in my opinion. But also, I also felt like this book would have been better given, I think, the context of the situation and even the way some things were written. I just felt like this book would have been told better as women's fiction rather than a romance, which it is, you know, advertised and marketed and talked about as. That is all I have to say about Reminders of Him. Again, check out the reading vlog. So that is all the books I read for the month of January. Total, again, of 8 books. I'm super proud of myself. I've already started reading For February, again, I'm reading Redemptor. I also have a few books I'm super excited to be reading in February. I'm starting the Devil's Night series by Penelope Douglas, so I'm starting with Corrupt, so I'm super stoked and excited about that. But yeah, that is it for today's video. Again, if you have not, please make sure to comment down what your favorite book of the month was for January. I'm always curious, and I will see you guys in my next video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!